Nicole, hi.
Hi.
Welcome to the Mindfulpreneur podcast. Today we're going to chat all about your journey from going from building your personal brand to transitioning into an actual business. So tell us a little bit about your, pursuit in building Pursue Leisure and how that came to be. I know that you started off as a personal brand, right? So let's talk about how you made that transition and what that whole journey was all about.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me, Alyssa. I'm so excited to be here. I started my personal brand in college with a blog, um, focused mainly on healthy living and lifestyle and just my life in college, talking about recipes I was making, things I was buying, experiences I was having. And that has evolved significantly over the last decade plus as I've gotten married. I've had my daughter. Life has changed a lot since 2009 when I started that. So my blog sort of evolved into different aspects of social, of course. So Instagram, Pinterest, TikTok, things like that. And I've seen my audience kind of grow with me. So as my hobbies have changed and my lifestyle has changed, so has the hobbies and lifestyle of the people that follow my accounts. So as things have progressed and I've worked with different brands along the way, I kind of started to see two things. One, that the products that I was featuring or the products that I was pushing from other brands, my audience really resonated with it. And like I said, I've been doing this since 2009 in terms of a personal brand. So I've had a lot of like good things happen and bad things happen in terms of brand partnerships and things that I know that my audience likes them and things that I know that they don't like. So over the course of the last 10 plus years, I've sort of curated in my mind different things that I know would sell really well and all things that I personally use. And that's kind of how Pursue Leisure came to be. I started realizing that, I was looking for another creative outlet, but I was seeing that the things that I was promoting or talking about, people were interested in. So I really wanted kind of a stake in that. I wanted to, make my own products, and some of the products that I was using in my personal life that I do love, I did find things that I could do to make them better. And
Right.
that's kind of spiraled from that.
Right. And so, like, what were some of those items? You mentioned like there were some things that did a really good job at selling and then others that didn't. So, what are the things that were actually, I want to hear about both and then a little bit more about what you created and changed in the things that you're selling now through Pursue Leisure.
Yeah, so Pursue Leisure is a loungewear and lifestyles essentials company. We say our tagline is designed to elevate your everyday. So as a mom, I've really found that my daughter's 6 now, but when I was in the throes of her being a newborn and toddlerhood, I found that there was really not the opportunity to take a week-long vacation anytime I wanted or get a massage or a pedicure every week. It was really in those moments of the mundane, I guess, like going to the grocery store, making a Target run, things like that, that I wanted to elevate for my personal life to make sure that the things I was wearing, the things I was carrying, the things I was using was as elevated as possible and just made me feel good. So
Hmm.
the product that kind of launched Pursue Leisure was our notepad. It's for grocery and meal planning. And I started, documenting meals during COVID. And that kind of spiraled into this idea of creating my own notepad because I found that my audience really liked when I shared weekly recipes or things that I was doing in the kitchen because I have a full-time job. I'm a mom also. So I have a lot of things that I'm juggling. And I do find that I do a good job of putting my creativity where it makes sense and putting the time where it makes sense. So when I started creating this meal planner, I couldn't find something on the market that really had everything in one.
Mm.
So our meal planner has a menu on one side and a shopping list on the other, and you just tear off the shopping list and you can actually put it on your fridge. It has a magnet on it, which is not new, but the whole concept, there's not many out there. So that sort of launched it. And since then, we have totes. We're moving more into loungewear. We have a hat, just things that you would use on your day to day, and that's pretty much the mission behind our brand is make sure that you feel good when you're doing your everyday stuff.
Yeah, I love the fact that you had this personal brand that you built. You built a community, a group of people that trusted you, and you were like, "Hey, I don't want to be making money for somebody else and selling all these other products when I can make them better or make a version of them that is more aligned with my life and what I need, and then be able to kind of turn that into a business and monetize directly from it, as opposed to through some kind of affiliate marketing link, right?
Exactly.
So like
Exactly.
I guess the things that were working for you were mostly like the lifestyle wellness elements, right? And so what were some of the things that weren't working that you didn't feel your audience resonated with, and why?
So we just launched a little over a year ago. So we're still kind of in that phase where we're testing products and seeing what's going to work and what's not working.
Mhm.
The notepad was surprising to me because I assumed that people would want more wearables. So at this time, there's nothing that I can really say isn't performing great because everything's kind of just new
But
and we're learning
before,
as we
like when
go.
you were a personal brand though, like, before you actually
Oh,
transitioned into your business, like what wasn't working that basically gave you the guidance to create the type of business that you have and the things that you're selling? Because there were things that flopped and that weren't really resonating with your audience before, right? So I'm curious to know what those were.
yeah. So I feel like when I first started, like I said, I was very focused on health and wellness. And then I went through this period where I was just, pushing mom stuff and baby gear and kind of moving into that direction, being a
Yeah.
mommy blogger, I guess. And that wasn't resonating as much. I feel like it's a little bit too niche. And my audience, some were moms, but the majority of them were not. They were
Got
just
it.
busy working people. So I would say when I pigeonholed myself into creating content just about motherhood and promoting products only for moms, that's kind of where I saw a dip a little bit in engagement
Mm,
and in sales for affiliates. Um, and then, of course, any partnership that I took early on, where I was just like, oh, you're going to pay me all this money to just do a story or do an Instagram reel, those are also the ones that never do well. The products that I wasn't personally using. And when I was creating the products for Pursue Leisure, that was always in the back of my mind. I never wanted to push something that I personally wouldn't spend my money on because I would hate for someone just to, put their hard-earned money in our products and not love them. So everything that we put out, I've tested. That's why it takes so long for our products to come to launch. There's so much behind the scenes because I personally wouldn't want to put my money into something that was just white labeled, for instance.
right. And a lot of people do that today. So it's cool to know that it's super curated and it's still very much like you. It's just that you're not necessarily like the influencer, but it kind of
Right.
transformed from that so that your business can grow, so that you can have, a team eventually working for you. So like you mentioned, you're still working full time. So this is a bit of like a side hustle. Plus you have a family. How were you able to manage it all? And like, what is your future plan, I guess? Do you hope to have your business be full time? Are you happy with the balance between all of these elements right now? I'm curious to know your opinion.
I think I'll always have a full-time job. I mean, I'll never say never, but I really like having my hands in a lot of different things. I've always been that
Hmm.
way. Um, I get really bored easily. So I like having my full-time job from 9 to 5. I work in content marketing in the education space, which is industry-wise very different than what I'm doing now. Marketing obviously has been a great skill set to move over to be an entrepreneur, but I would say that I like having the opportunity to kind of have my toes in different things. So I'm still writing my blog, for instance. I have Pursue Leisure. I am a mom, I'm a wife, and I also have my full-time job. So I personally like having that. I know some people go into entrepreneurship thinking, in the next 5 years, I want to quit my job and go full steam ahead in the business. That would be great, but I don't know what the future holds. I personally, as a mom, I like having the stability of having my full-time job. We're not at a point right now where I can just quit and feel comfortable financially just running the business.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. And some people are happy doing that forever, and their business doesn't have to be like the be all end all, but instead an addition, something that like adds value to your life, like you
Mhm.
said, that, complements your interests and what makes you happy and keeps you, I guess, on your toes. So talking about like actually building the brand, what was that like from transitioning from personal brand to the actual brand of Pursue Leisure? Was it difficult to transfer your audience over? Was it seamless? I'm kind of wondering what those main challenges were, or if it was super easy.
I think it was pretty easy. I mean, when I think of our customer, I'm a very visual person. So when I was thinking of the brand and the visuals for the brand, as the colors we were using for our logo, the colors we use for every product launch, I kept thinking of one person in mind. And I don't know if you've seen the photo of Princess Diana. I've mentioned this a few times, like running across the street. She's wearing like a big baggy, like Harvard sweatshirt or something and bike shorts. And she just looks so effortless as she's just going about her day. And that's
Mm,
the person that I always in the back of my head thought of as we were rolling things out and launching the brand. Who is that ideal customer? Because I think when you're trying to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. I
yeah.
firmly believe that. So in my mind, I always had, that she could be a mom. Maybe she's not. She maybe works full time. Maybe she's juggling a lot of things, but she's busy. She's on the go, but she likes looking and feeling her best at all times. So that person in my mind is similar to my personal brand, I guess. It does translate really well. And a lot of my audience is in a space where, they are looking to elevate their lives at a decent price point, of course. So I think that the crossover from my personal brand to Pursue Leisure was pretty seamless, I would say. I feel like they're parallels for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. That's good to hear. And I love what you said. It's like when you try to appeal to everybody, you're kind of connecting with nobody, which is so true. And we've mentioned this so many times on the podcast, like the power of specificity and how important it is to be super clear on like who you're communicating to and really just target them. And it doesn't mean that you can't have multiple like segments in your target market, right? It doesn't
Of
have to
course, yeah.
just be that woman. But like, let's say, you have ads running specifically for women who are pregnant. Like that's going to look different from like the woman who's maybe like still in school and studying and busy, or the one who's like juggling multiple jobs or raising a family, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
all of those buckets will look a little different, even though in essence they're similar, right? But then how can we break that down even further so that when you are targeting that messaging, you're speaking to those individual people? So super super important to keep in mind. Is there anything else along your journey that you feel like was a big lesson that you've learned along the way?
I think one of the things is I'm someone who is super self aware. I know my
Mm,
strengths, I know my weaknesses. And I think if you're going into anything, whether you want to launch a podcast, a side business, a blog, anything really, you need to be really hyper focused on who you are as a person and know your strengths and weaknesses. I'll be the first person to say that I am not great at coding websites. I do it because I don't have the resources yet to outsource every single bit of my business. I outsource when I can. But I think going into a new opportunity, knowing, these are the times of day that I'm most productive. These are the times of day that I'm, maybe more creative with writing or photography versus other times. Looking at your schedule and looking at who you are as a person has been a huge game changer for me, specifically juggling the full-time job and Pursue Leisure. So I think going into it, knowing what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, where can you outsource when you can, what makes sense to outsource, what could you, maybe spend a couple hours learning yourself, and then
mhm.
making the decisions from there.
Yeah, I think the outsourcing thing is an interesting topic too, because I mean, I've been running my business for almost 7 years now. And in the beginning, I basically did it all, everything, every single thing between the
Yeah,
accounting, the project management, um, graphic design, creative direction, website design, like literally everything, which I
everything.
think,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it is beneficial to a degree because I understand all of the facets of the business and who does what. As we've grown, I've had to bring people on that execute on levels that I simply cannot or do not have the skill set to do so. Like there's advanced website development. Like the websites I was building were through like WordPress templates. It's a very different story. I
mm-hmm.
have a very basic knowledge of code, but if we want to build full custom, which we do now, we have advanced developers who are able to do that. But because I had that basic knowledge of that simple code, I'm able to understand, number one, how long certain things take, the effort that goes behind it, which works in, number one, the empathy that I can feel for other people, but also
Right.
to not be taken advantage of, because that happens too. It's like, when you're hiring someone to do a job and they're saying, oh, it's going to take 100 hours, but you're like, I've done this before and it's taken like 20, like
Exactly.
it doesn't, you can't put it past you. Exactly. So I think being involved in all those different facets of the business, especially in the beginning, is really cool. I think it's a great education. And then depending on what your plan is, whether you want to grow or not, like you said, there are so many resources out there. You could go on these freelancer websites. There are, recruiters that can help. You could go on any kind of job boards and look for different individuals. But I mean, even the way that Nomad Creative is structured, we don't have full-time people. It's a group of freelancers, right? But most of my freelancers have worked with me for years now, and they've stayed loyal, and they kind of get the majority of the work because they want it, and we're happy to give it to them because they've done a good job, right? So it's like a win-win relationship there, which is really cool. But some people might just need a freelancer to do a one and done job, and so that's where you could go on things like Upwork, Fiverr, and whatnot.
Yep.
So if you're an entrepreneur who's in the earlier stages of building your brand, who maybe doesn't have the resources like the position you're in, Nicole, then you can learn and do the things yourself, or you can hire a part-time or a freelance person just to get that specific thing done. And I think it's important to also recognize like where your skill set lies, because certain things you can get away with, and others it's worth investing like the extra dollars to get it done right. Especially when it comes to just like visual identity. If like creative is not really your strong suit, the way you appear and look in front of other people, you want to be competitive with everybody else, right? So if you're like a horrible graphic designer and you're like, I don't want to invest in any kind of graphic designer to do the work or any resources to help me get it done, then chances are it's not going to look great, and you're not going to look the best next to your competitors, right? So kind of just like paying attention to where that skill set lies, for sure. In terms of like your family support system, friends, like how has that transition been? Now that you're doing all these things and running a business, having a full-time job, being a mom, obviously you have a lovely family at home, but how does that look like on the outside in terms of support system? Are there other friends who also have side hustles that can understand you? Do you feel supported?
Definitely. I feel like having a personal brand for all of these years, I've definitely had a good network of other bloggers and other creatives in that regards. And most of them have transitioned to having side businesses or full-time businesses that they've started themselves at this point. So I've definitely had reached out to friends who have kind of followed the same trajectory of a career path as I have. So they understand, how do you juggle this with your full-time job? What are some good resources, like you said, like Fiverr I've used in the past because a friend had told me about that. One of my friends owns a Pilates studio. So although it's not the exact same business that I'm running, she does give me tips and tricks along the way on,
Of course. Yeah, there are so
who
many
to work
parallels.
with for graphics. There's so many parallels.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be in the exact same industry. So I think even if you don't know anyone personally, there's so many resources out there. You can just go on TikTok. I'm on TikTok constantly. I don't know these people, but small business TikTok is so fun. Just learning from other people on the internet has been, again, a game changer for me.
Mm-hmm.
YouTube is
And like
great.
Facebook groups too. There's lots of
Facebook
groups
groups
as
are
well.
amazing. Some of them can be spammy, but I feel like if you find the right one, there's so many resources out there. So when people always say that, I don't know where to start, just Google. Google is my best friend. There are so many resources digitally now that you can at least figure out the foundation of what you want to do. And then, like you said, either reach out to someone personally or hire someone. But I think at the end of the day, and when I was launching Pursue Leisure, I thought of this too. It's like, you don't go into entrepreneurship in the mindset that you're making money in the first couple of years. So if you just are thinking, I want to start a small business, I don't know where to start, really figure that piece out before you just launch something quickly. Because if there's not a passion behind your business, and if there's not, drive behind what you're doing, and you don't have the know-it-all to just keep going because you're not passionate about it, that's where I see that people fail, both on the entrepreneurship side and as well as, the influencers or content creators who just take on random brand partnerships. Everything fails. And I found that when you're not completely in it and you're not completely passionate about what you're selling or what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's a lot of self-motivation required in entrepreneurship. And not to say that like failure is a bad thing either, because you can fail and get up and keep trying.
Right.
But it's more, I think the giving up is, I think, what I feel is like you're saying, because when people give up, it's because they're not motivated, they don't have the drive, they're not trying hard enough to be successful. Because I think that at the end of the day, like you will always have failures, and if your goal is to build a successful business, whether it's this one, the next one, or the one after that, you just
Mhm.
have to keep going, and you really have to be self-motivated in order to get there. Otherwise, like there's no one there, there's no one holding your hand, there's no one like saying you can do it. Like you got to do that yourself. And hopefully you also have a community that is supportive, that does give you a pat on the back and encourages you and supports you and whatnot. But like you can't rely on that. Like I think you need to really be reliant on yourself, because at the end of the day, you're the one who's waking up and doing the work and finding the people and building the community. Like that's all on you. So
Yep.
yeah, I think surrounding yourself with like great people as well is super important in your personal life and also in your business. And yeah, like Nicole said, guys, Facebook groups, there's so many communities out there. And also different like organizations through, I think there's one company called the Monday Girl, there's Women Who
Mhm.
Freelance, there's the Forum. Like if you're a woman, or if you're a woman specifically, there's tons of groups out there, but there's also many that are just like for entrepreneurs. Like if you're wondering what to look up, just look up like entrepreneurs in Toronto, in Philadelphia, in whatever, wherever you're living, and then you could find a local community. I think that's a really cool way to connect and touch base. Okay, before we wrap up, we always end with the mindful minute, where you share one piece of advice that you can't really learn from a textbook, that you've learned along your brand building journey so far. What would you like to share with our audience?
I would say to put your head down, put your blinders on, and just focus on you. I know we all get into the endless scroll. I know I do that constantly, but the more content that you consume, I truly believe that you start to look, sound, act like the people around you. And sometimes when you're
Mm,
trying to build a business or, find your own brand voice and tone, you really need to figure that out on your own. And consuming everyone else, you're just going to become another version of them. So I would say if you want to start anything, really focus on get off the internet a little bit, step back from the endless scroll TikTok and Instagram, and focus on who you want to be as a brand. What does your brand sound like? What does your brand look like? Of course, pull inspiration here and there, but if you're constantly being inundated with videos and content and photos, you kind of just become, what is that saying, like same different font, same, do you know what I'm talking about? It's like same font, different. I don't. So you end up being another version of someone else instead of being yourself. And I think just put your blinders on, and you'll figure it out along the way. And of course, like you said, failure is inevitable, and failure will happen. But then at least you know that gave it your all and really focused
mhm.
um, before completely giving up. So that's what I would say.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Where can everyone go to learn more about you and pursue leisure?
Sure. So pursueleisure.com. Our handle is just Pursue Leisure on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and then my personal brand is just my first and last name, Nicole Verdana.
Easy peasy. Okay. Well, thank you
Okay.
everyone for listening, and we'll chat next week. Bye.
Bye.